So Rachel Wilson tackles some Neolithic thespians who have come with their homunculus brain. Let's see if they can dig in that bag and pull out something worthy of a conversation. We're looking at feminism, its impact, its relevance, and whether or not society really needs this. What's the origin of it? So let's see what she does with them. Should be interesting.
Women are oppressed currently in this world, right?
Oh, explain.
Less
I'd
so.
love to know how.
What do you mean?
Any
they can't
example?
drive. They can't go out without.
They can't drive?
In certain countries, absolutely, women are oppressed. Are you
Where?
literally denying that women are not oppressed in this world?
I don't even think
I
it
agree, but
amounts to
but we
oppression.
agree that that was oppression. That
I
they
don't
were
agree
oppressed.
that was oppression
So the
at
government
all.
saying that people cannot vote in the country they live is not oppression.
No, because
Just because it was
All right,
wrong
let's get into
for
this
the
one.
men doesn't mean that it still was unequal.
so do you
What do
think
these guys
that
have to
we would
offer?
have the welfare state without female voters?
Feminism,
The welfare state is a good thing.
oppression of women. Let's see modern day debates. Let's see what Rachel Wilson can do with them.
Okay, the first topic is feminism was
Good
not
topic.
a reaction to oppression. Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too.
I guess a natural first question is what you think it arose from.
So
Or you could just start with
story
the
most
answer.
everyone's heard is that the reason feminism came about is because the evil patriarchy was
Yeah.
oppressing the women, and they looked around one day and they went, "Oh no, we're being oppressed. We have to march and
The evil patriarch,
protest
yeah.
until we're equal." That's really not how it happened at all. It was more of an astroturfed social engineering project by radical revolutionaries and wealthy industrialists.
So I'm just going
Money.
to be honest. I don't know enough about the history of feminism to say whether you're right or wrong. So I guess I kind of would rather just get to the meat of what I'm assuming you're saying,
Sure.
which is that feminism is inherently wrong, right? Because it wasn't founded by oppressed women. It was founded by some other, corrupt industry.
That
Yes,
and
genius,
people
you're
just
onto
have
something.
this assumption because of over 100 years of propaganda that women were historically oppressed, when I don't think that's accurate at all. I don't think there's any real evidence that women were oppressed compared to men, for instance.
Fun fact:
So
the
what
same propaganda that was used to get women to sign up to to work, to give away themselves, to give away their labor. The same propaganda that was used then is still being used now to convince these men and other men like them that women were oppressed because they were staying home and enjoying themselves and taking care of the family and living a good life.
Parts of our history where there were just objectively unequal rights, like voting, for instance.
So in the West, most men only gained the right to suffrage maybe a decade or so
Yeah.
before women did. So
A decade or
people
so more.
assume that as soon as we had, various forms of democracy, either in America or England, that all men could vote. That's not the case. It was a very small
Selected
group
few.
of men. There were a
Yeah.
lot of caveats you had to. It depends on the time and place, but you had to either be a landowner, you had to have certain other various requirements. Sometimes you had to pay a poll tax in order to be able to vote.
a
So in
wealthy
England,
name.
for example, men only gained universal suffrage about a decade before women did.
But it's good that we made that progress, right?
I don't think so, but that's a separate prompt.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't really know where to go from there then, because again, regardless of the circumstances by which feminism arose, is kind of indifferent to me. This is kind of similar to conversations like
How is it
I had earlier.
regardless of how feminism arose? The origin is extremely important. That's very important. You've got to take that into account as well. How feminism came about is extremely important to understand where it is now and exactly where it's going. What were the objectives of feminism? Come on, bud.
As far as like religion, for example, in society, right? It's more about the effects of it. And so regardless of the circumstances of how feminism arose, I think that the effects of it are probably advantageous.
I think the effects are deeply disadvantageous to both
Deeply.
men and women. And I think women, if your concern is for women, we were better off prior to our liberation from the evil patriarchy. If you look at every metric that we have to assess women's happiness and well-being in modern times, it's lower than it was prior to when they started tracking this around the 1960s.
So I think there's a problem with the data tracking there, right? I don't know this figures specifically, but I mean,
Yeah, you don't. He does know the figures, but there's a problem with the data tracking.
We have a lot less horses
This
in our
guy.
military than we also did back in like the 1800s, right? So
Sure.
I think that
Well, let me ask you, what do you think it did for women? Why do you think, or for anyone, what do you think the advantages are? Why was it good?
Well, I think specifically just giving equal footing and opportunity to women, which I don't think is even entirely fulfilled at this
Equal
point.
footing
but
to what end?
I'm sure that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the traditional, female
Well,
role.
What
but,
opportunities did they not have?
well, voting for one. But, even in the
But
just
workplace.
discussed
men
that.
couldn't vote either for the most part.
Yeah, and we
So-
fixed it, right? So I think that this is, just because it was a wrong before that for men doesn't mean that it still was unequal.
So do you think that we would have the welfare state without female voters? Do you think the welfare state is a good thing?
I don't understand the question. I apologize.
So would we have massive entitlement spending? Would we have food stamps? Would we have open borders and all these perks for immigrants coming in where they're getting free housing and healthcare and food if it weren't for female voters?
I think you still would. I don't think female voters necessarily have to sway those things, but I also
The data
Yeah,
says
female
that-
voters definitely sway those things because men would never vote for that. Men would never vote for a system where people who just don't work are benefiting from that. That's not how men situate themselves in a hierarchy, and that's not how society is typically designed by men.
Overwhelmingly, they are the most reliable voting bloc for all types of entitlements, especially open borders and immigration.
If you go back though historically, right, and again, I didn't know the topic, so I don't have any literature to like literally support this, but women had a lot of influence in the House even when they couldn't vote, right?
Exactly.
So, but we gave the ability
Yeah,
to
women have
to
always had
express their
influence,
own
yes.
independent votes. They are a vote, and so if let's just say you're right that women are a major proponent for policies we see in immigration, who cares? They're still a part of our populace. They get
Well,
to have a say on this.
If you're a woman and you're living in New York City or other places where there's tons of illegal immigration and you're now being subjected to disproportional amounts of violence that you weren't
That's not
subjected
true.
to
That's
before.
not true.
Okay.
No,
Go ahead and substantiate that.
Yeah, so illegal immigrants,
substantiated.
specifically, if you obviously remove the illegal part of the immigration,
Stupid
literally
data.
just commit crimes at lower rates. Than
Rubbish.
So you
foreign
think that all the
citizens.
Mexicans
Rubbish. I think the sad thing is that people like these, they believe that a woman's influence is only in voting. Women had influence in the home. They had influence. They could influence their husbands to do exactly what they wanted to do and to do what was best for the family. Many of these men, when they went into the arenas, when they went into political arenas, they were carrying out the request of their wives. And they got things done. So women had influence. Influence doesn't have to be overt. It can be covert as well.
gangs.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Hello there.
Hello.
Well, surprise, surprise, I agree with Wilson. But is it fair to, since we agree on feminism specifically, is it fair to shift it to women voting specifically?
Well, there's going to be a few prompts along those lines. So this first one is just that feminism was not a reaction to oppression of women by men.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that. Again, I think that's,
I'd say
there's
the
a lot of
vast
people that
majority
don't.
of people don't agree that that's the case. And they would say, well, if that's the case, why do we have it? How did we get it if it wasn't a reaction to some kind of oppression?
The same way we still have feminism today, that people can be wrong, and a lot of people can be wrong. I think a lot of people, it seems like you present that as like, oh, people are going to disagree with me.
They do all the time, every day. So every gender studies professor
Yeah, most
in every
people
major
disagree,
university
yes.
would disagree with me. And
Yeah,
they would
but-
say that the reason feminism and women's liberation activism was necessary was because there were certain aspects where women were oppressed by men.
Sure. But
Precisely.
Don't you think, especially with the last election, it's shown that the opinions that unfortunately absolutely were infiltrated by these types of professors and throughout society. Doesn't that show that there was the silent majority? A lot of people didn't really want to go along with it, but they were too scared to be on the wrong side of history or whatever. And that now that we're starting to see, there's a lot more people who are normal, like who just see, yeah, obviously feminism is this, obviously pride parades are too crazy, all that stuff.
Well, if you agree with me on the prompt, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to argue with you, but
I agree. That's
Yeah. What is
he
but I
saying?
didn't make the prompt. You made the prompt.
right. But if you don't disagree with me on the prompt, am I supposed to change the prompt or change my position or change my? You could challenge me on something else, I suppose.
Well, I did, but you said you
Precisely.
different prompt for
You
that.
said that.
So okay,
What's
well then-
your
so
proposition?
what-
Is that
what-
Then
people
argue
do
the
agree with
prompt.
me? You think that the vast
Yeah,
majority of
I think-
people think
yeah.
that feminism was not a reaction to
I
oppression?
don't know what people think about
Yo.
the origins, but I think it's far more common that people be like, I don't really know the origins, but wherever it is today, like it definitely wasn't this. And I'll say, even anecdotally, even calling myself an atheist, I've been thinking about that title in the same way as feminism. Like if you see just an average a woman today, and she says, I care about the equality of the genders. Like, you wouldn't call, oh, you're a feminist.
Yes, I would.
Well,
Feminism-
fine, maybe you would, but again, the average person believes that there should be equality of the genders, and so when you're like, a feminist,
I don't think
it's when you're
equality of
talking
the
about,
genders
oh,
is
men,
possible.
Men are this, or I need 9-month abortions. That's the understanding that people have when we use that word. I think I think you're underestimating the amount of people who do see through.
It would be
all the
good
BS
to
that
hear what this
has
guy
held up.
really thinks when he says equality of the genders. What does that mean for him?
Until very recently, and there's a lot of people still there. But I don't I mean I don't know who you're talking to if they're disagreeing with you. But I don't know how well they represent average people.
Well, the gentleman who just sat there before you said that he felt that women not being able to vote was an example of women being oppressed.
I agree with that, but I don't think that means.
Why
that,
do you
that
think
doesn't mean
that? Why do you think that was oppression?
I
Because
mean,
one
in the
group
loosest
couldn't
term,
vote.
it's just the government not allowing you to do something. Is that not?
Yeah, the government didn't allow lots of people to do lots of things. So I
yeah,
don't see
yeah,
how you
so-
could say that this is an
Right.
example
Oppression
that
doesn't-
women are
oppression
oppressed.
isn't the end of the world necessarily.
I don't even think
I
it
agree, but
amounts
But
to
you're
oppression.
just using that
That
word
was oppression.
loosely.
But
I
they
don't
were
agree
oppressed.
that was oppression
So the
at
government
all.
saying that people cannot vote in the country they live is not oppression.
No, because this country was never founded with universal suffrage. It was never intended to be something where one person, one vote was
No,
the way
yeah.
they did things. It was supposed to be
That was
people
the
with
pressure.
stake in the game.
How would you
That's
characterize?
an important point. People with stake in the game. That's an important point in understanding how this whole voting idea came about. People had to have responsibility. They had to have something to lose. They had something to gain in the first place, which is why they had the ability, the privilege, the absolute privilege to vote. The idea of universal suffrage where everybody has a vote, that's a new concept. And that was never going to work because we all realized that at some point, some people were going to vote without having any stake in the game.
Characterize that notion of a person living in a country and they can't be
So,
part of the decision.
Right
What would you
now,
call that?
there's
Reality.
a lot of things I don't have any participation in the decision making. There's a lot. I like during COVID restrictions, for example, I had no say. You had no say. The things were dictated to us from the top down.
Just going 30 seconds. So what would you call that aspect? I live in a country and I don't have. That's called. It's not oppression. It's
Just not oppression is a very specific thing. It means that you're intentionally being held down.
okay. So then it's
Right.
that.
I don't think it's holding you down. You can still live your life and do what you want. You don't need
A lot of people don't vote and still live their lives.
voting isn't necessary.
Precisely.
To,
You're simply
quality
proving
of
the
life
point.
or freedom at all. Really, you
You
as
just
a
proved
woman
the
not
point.
being able to vote does not equal you being oppressed.
Sorry, we agree too much. Sorry.
Rachel. If feminism wasn't a response to oppression, why the hell does feminism exist?
I'll tell you why.
Good question,
There
dude.
was a small group of radical revolutionaries who felt that the current system prior to this that we had through all of history was inherently oppressive to women because they felt that women and men were equal, that they're basically the same, they just have different reproductive organs, right? And that's really the only difference. They should be anything a man could do, a woman should be doing. This is a very arbitrary stance to take. And if you
Yeah.
look historically at what
No evidence.
rights men and women had, I think you could argue men were more oppressed than women prior even to feminism.
Seriously?
Yes.
Seriously.
Men were, in what way? How were men more oppressed than women?
Well, women haven't ever been
die
conscripted to
more,
go fight
but-
and die in wars, and especially
Yes.
prior to feminism, that was a really brutal thing. About 80% of men historically have ended up not, well, no, it's 60% of men historically have never been able to reproduce. They've never had the opportunity, whether it's because they died young as cannon fodder, couldn't get a wife, weren't selected to be married. Women, all you have to do is be fertile, and you're going to have progeny. You're never going to be sent to the front lines in a war that you don't want to fight in. They don't have to work in coal mines.
And have
they
your
don't
needs
have
taken
to
care
do
of.
the dirty, dangerous
Precisely.
jobs that men have to
Sure,
do.
women are very privileged. What does that have
Yes.
to do with feminism and
Well,
how
it's
it
not-
came about?
You can't claim that women
What?
are oppressed and also claim that
Women
they're privileged.
definitely were. Do you
How could they be privileged and be
wait,
oppressed?
wait. Do you just
Oh my God. Is he really trying to argue that women were privileged at the same time they were oppressed? Like, see, dude, seriously? In the same sentence, he's saying women were privileged, but they were also oppressed. Oh God. Jeez, no.
agree that women were never oppressed? Do
Yes,
you agree?
I agree.
You agree? Wait, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that women have never been oppressed?
Yes. I believe that women were never.
Seriously?
Yes, as a
How
whole
could you
group.
possibly
Who
think to
oppressed
believe
them?
that?
Who oppressed them? Listen,
half the
I saw your
men.
thing with Andrew, and you love to do this thing where you're like, but my presupposition, like you've never examined why you believe that. Why do you believe women were oppressed? You tell me why you believe that.
This is literally a historical fact.
All right, prove the
it's
fact.
Not a historical
Not
fact.
having the right
Prove
to
the
vote.
fact.
Women are oppressed currently in this world. Right?
Oh,
Right?
explain.
Less
I'd
so-
love to know how.
What do you mean?
Any
they can't
example?
drive. They can't go out without.
They can't drive?
In certain countries, absolutely, women are oppressed. Are you
Where?
literally denying that women are not oppressed in this world? In certain
Well, we're talking
obviously
about
in America, right?
America.
I'm an American.
Right.
Women have equal rights, and I think this is a great society. But to suggest that women have not been oppressed in the past
Where
in this
in,
country,
where in the
past,
West? Yeah, in this country.
in the past in this country, and throughout the world currently, to suggest that they're not oppressed is absurd.
Show me an example of
It's absurd.
American women. That's not an argument. Show me an example of American women ever being oppressed comparatively to men.
There's a time in this country where women can't vote.
There was time in this country where men couldn't vote.
So
The
what's that?
majority
of men
That-
could
that's-
not
vote.
that is not a retort. That is just saying, well, that's true. You basically just said that's true, but. So you basically agree with me. So I asked you.
How
you
were
asked
men?
Me,
How were men oppressing women if those men themselves didn't
You
have the
asked-
right to
you
vote
asked me
either?
to say-
So men with no
Yeah.
voting rights oppressed
Yeah.
women with
So
no
the
voting
oppressed
rights.
men
you
oppress
asked
women.
me to give you an example of when women were oppressed, and I did. And then
By
your
whom?
response was just that, yeah, men were oppressed too.
Yeah. So
right,
how
so you
how
agree
could
with me.
feminism
Cool.
be a reaction to oppression
How
by
is
men?
it not?
Because they weren't
every
oppressed.
action is
Men were actually women have always been privileged compared to men. Always.
Women?
Throughout all of history, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
come on.
What do you mean, come on? Like I said,
in the
women
current-
don't have
on.
to. Women have
go
never
live
had to
in the
die
Middle-
in
Your argument,
battle.
Live in
come
the
on.
Middle East and tell me that same thing. That's insane.
That you could argue that they're even privileged there comparatively
Stop.
to the men.
Stop. You don't believe that. Do you
I
really
do believe that. Absolutely. Where in the Middle East and what are you talking about? Are you talking about the Taliban? Are you talking about Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia has become very progressive
Go
and
to
women there
Afghanistan
can work
tell
and
me
they
that
can drive
women,
and
go to Afghanistan and tell me women are privileged. more
well, how are
privileged
they
than men.
not?
Stop it. This is a rhetorical question. She's asking the
Then
same
prove the
question.
point, dude.
Who are you appealing to here?
The camera.
So if let's just grant you that the Taliban is an oppressive regime. I'm
Grant
not
me? Wait, it's literally grant me that they're an oppressive regime? Seriously?
well, you would have to take into account all the ways that men are also oppressed under the Taliban
Precisely.
regime, which you could argue
I
is
agree
much
with
worse.
that, but
they
that's
are
not the
sent,
point.
They are sent to fight and blow themselves up and die for things that they probably don't
Your
want to
argument
if
is
they
all
had the
about
choice.
whataboutism.
But let's stick to America because the topic was,
sure.
It's more here. So in the United States, women have never been oppressed. Do you know that women have always had higher rates of literacy? Okay.
Greetings.
Hello.
Hello.
Greetings.
Can you please repeat the question?
So the prompt is
All right. Let's see
feminism
if
or women's
Gabriel can do any
liberation
better.
was not a reaction to oppression by men.
Could it can be?
What?
Could the oppression be of a different form that led to this revolution?
That's logically possible, but you'd have to give me an example or demonstration of how you think that's the case.
Okay. How
Yeah, prove
about
it.
the failures of institutions that has occurred? For example, the separation of church and state, the failure of the church to educate these women has allowed them to be victimized by those who obviously desire divisions.
Why do you think women weren't allowed to be educated?
Well, I do believe they should have been educated.
They were educated. I was actually just about to tell the guy who sat down before you, women have historically always had higher rates of literacy and high school graduation for as long as we've been tracking in this country, which is about 1790. So we're talking about the early founding of the nation. Women were actually more educated than men. And part of the reason for this is women were the ones that educated children.
Even now, the colleges and universities are overflowing with women who are graduating at a faster rate than men. Significantly more women than men.
And they weren't sent off to, work in infrastructure jobs or farming at, 12 or 14 years old the way that men were. They weren't having to go and die in battle or anything like that. So women being at home
They
got
had more time for
education
reading
than most men historically.
Understood. Now, could that have been corrupted from the beginning? For example, would be
what a privilege.
Beginning, middle, and end of a story. Education begins at a format where you began, depending on the topic that you have a desire to learn, or at least you should have been taught. Could that have been manipulated form of education that has occurred and people weren't aware of it, and that in due time this revolution, feminism, was just an expected outcome that could have been prevented but never was addressed?
I really
That
don't
makes
know
no
what
sense.
you mean by that.
What I mean is someone lied to these women.
Oh, yes,
whether it be
absolutely.
themselves or a combination of both, and or
Yes.
another third party that desired their outcomes. Just
Yeah.
using
Propaganda
them as pawns
throat,
to
yes.
Yeah,
meet the
I
ends
think
of their
that's definitely true, and that's one of my evidences for the fact that feminism was not some kind of grassroots reaction to abusive oppression by the evil patriarchy. So,
Okay, so evil patriarchy. Is there an opposite of evil patriarchy, which is a good patriarchy?
I think we've always had a benevolent patriarchy. I think it's been framed that patriarchy, which just means rule by the father, has always been some kind of evil and nefarious attempt to just keep women down and make them into slaves, when that was honestly never the case.
Would you agree
So
that
far
it's
from the truth.
rules and regulation of the father to guard and protect his daughter, and obviously his wife, who's going to being the bearer of his children?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what if that father got corrupt?
Well, there
Patriarchal corruption cannot be avoided, because wherever you have benevolence, you're always going to find corruption. Corruption will always sneak in. But the father's role has always been to protect his family, protect his daughter, protect his son, ensure his daughter gets the best outcome for her life, ensure she gets the best husband, which is why in the past, potential husbands had to come to the father to be vetted first. And even though statistically it shows that women who get married without having their potential husband vetted tend to end up in a disastrous relationship, because they most often do not choose the right man. They need another man to vet this man to see exactly what this guy has to bring and what he has to offer to his potential spouse.
there's always going to be some corruption in hierarchies. It's unavoidable. That doesn't mean the whole hierarchy is bad.
Okay, so at what point will the whole thing be corrupt?
I think that that's kind of a slippery slope type of a fallacy where it'd be pretty hard, or a continuum fallacy where it may be hard for you to prove a point. But my contention is that there was no overall plot, no overall nefarious oppression of women by men as a whole. So if you can tell me where there was.
Well, wouldn't it would be, let's go to Christian ethics, where technically we're at war. Technically, Christianity at war, a division of good and evil. You have an opponent that is obviously an essential essence, a living entity, who decided to do evil and desires to breed death and destruction. Manipulating certain individuals, let's say, desire greed and wealth or power, may that be a combination, whether or not, fooled, gullible human beings, well, let's just say women who weren't properly taught to rebel in different form of ways, like feminism.
Sure.
And there's no safeguarding because obviously...
Yeah, well, the safeguarding was always the church. That's the thing. The safeguarding was always the scriptures. The safeguarding was always ethical thinking and moral behavior. That was a safeguarding. But now you have OF that is encouraging young girls to prostitute themselves. Now you have a society that says to women, you can be anything you want to be, including being a celebrated prostitute. So where is the safeguarding? Where are the rails? Everything is completely out of whack.
The separation of church and state allowed this because the church has failed in their own aspect, as well as the nation. They allowed these problems to being stirred.
Well, you could say that, you know, the Protestant foundings of the nation and the idea of separation in church of state was a bad idea. Correct. I don't know that that's relevant to the claim that most people make, which is that feminism was simply a reaction to abuses of men oppressing women. So,
well, could the reaction be forthcoming? Could have been like forewarned. Negligence may have occurred.
I mean, it could.
Good.
Dude has a lot of questions and very few answers. This was a no contest for Rachel. She really schooled them in what feminism really is and what it is that the society gets out of feminism, which ultimately is just destruction, disaster, and the complete annihilation of the nuclear family. So these guys have a lot to learn about feminism. They believe women are oppressed because women say they are oppressed. But if you look at society, look at the privileges that women have, look at the benefits that women have. Are they truly oppressed? Are they really oppressed? Is that oppression?